finding time from your busy schedules in your life to come support me and celebrate with me. I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And I feel the love from you, and I send it right back out to you. And I'd like to especially thank the ladies who hosted this event for me, Stacy and Marcia, and Pam. I'm very blessed to have friends and colleagues like these ladies who celebrate my successes and support me and support my extracurricular activities. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them later, but forgive me for scripting a speech, but the Columbia has really good sangria, and if you know me well, you know if I have one sangria, I'm rendered rather speechless, so I really need to depend upon this.
I find that hard to believe.
Okay. So I'm delighted to report that what began more than 8 years ago as self-prescribed occupational therapy has turned into a critically acclaimed 2-volume biography, or what many of you who work in the mental health field would know is the longest biopsychosocial assessment summary in the history of the world. It has been a long journey toward publishing, and these books serve as evidence of both persistence and my self-diagnosis of OCD, as the bibliography alone is 58 pages. I intended this research and writing project to serve as a diversion from my clinical work as a licensed mental health counselor. However, I selected a remarkable subject who only brought me closer to my work. For over 25 years, I've worked with children in the child welfare system who've survived trauma, sexual abuse and physical abuse and neglect, as well as adults with chronic and persistent mental illness. So Marilyn Monroe began her life as Norma Jean Baker, and she survived a childhood marked by complex trauma. She was raised in foster homes and an orphanage as a result of her mother's psychiatric instability and her father's abandonment. She battled major depression and bipolar disorder during a time when she had limited treatment options. She was the first figure to openly and bravely discuss childhood sexual abuse during a time in our history when the topic was minimized and denied by the culture at large. She also survived domestic violence and suffered from endometriosis, which resulted in chronic pain and the inability to have children. Marilyn and her struggles are an illustration of the many children and adults I have served over the years. Only she is universally known. I think of Marilyn working toward 4 goals: seeking love and stability denied by her childhood, desiring to become a serious actress, educating and developing herself, and her desire to become a wife and mother. She continues to symbolize the American dream. She rose from poverty, worked hard, and succeeded against the odds, never losing sight of her humble beginnings and relating to those who also struggled. She was honest about her limitations, studied acting at the height of her fame, and had a deliciously appealing, self-depreciating sense of humor. She advocated for civil rights and participated in many charities that benefited children. Marilyn's legion of predominantly male biographers were seduced by her physical beauty and complex nature, but completely overlooked what I had seen as so obvious. She was a resilient survivor of abuse and mental illness who became a goddess, a legend, and an icon. She inspires young people today, and her tragic death does not mar this image. By revealing her vulnerability and humanity, Marilyn endures as a beloved American treasure. Part of her enduring appeal may be the empathy her pain and life experiences evoke in each of us. I knew I belonged to the public and to the world, Marilyn wrote, aware of the emotional chord she struck in her audience, not because I was talented or even beautiful, but because I had never belonged to anything or anyone else. My research began in 1999 when I published a short book about Marilyn's renovation of a home in the last months of her life, the home in which she died. Someone may hold up that book right now. Someone might have it. Who's here? Lynette has that book. The renovation, incomplete at the time of her death, served as a metaphor of her unfinished life and premature death. The title was Pursuum Perficio, Marilyn Monroe's Brentwood Hacienda, the story of her final months. and the title was borrowed from the coat of arms and the Latin inscription which appeared on a tile on the threshold of the home's entry door. Oscar can translate the Latin phrase.
My journey ends here.
The book resonated with readers who reached out and encouraged me to write a full-length biography. At a book signing in Los Angeles, I finally met many of the readers from all over the world and was amazed by their numbers and enthusiasm. It was an exciting and humbling experience that motivated me. So for many years, I gathered information and started writing in 2006. By 2009, I began seriously writing on Fridays, my day off. When I finished in 2013, in true OCD fashion, I produced over 1,200 pages of a comprehensive biography told within the context of Marilyn's times. It was so prolific that the publisher had no option but to print in 2 volumes. I am told the only other motion picture actors to merit such study were John Wayne and Barbara Stanwyck. The book does have girth. They say size doesn't matter. Proud as a spine. And I have told people if you don't want to read it, it serves as a doorstop, a weapon, and a paperweight. My thesis about Marilyn is that she's a psychological, cultural, and spiritual phenomenon. Her childhood situation and its impact on her career and relationships, her family history of mental illness, and her death by suicide makes her a salient subject to educate the public about childhood abuse and neglect and mental health issues. Culturally, Marilyn impacted us in the 1950s and 60s and endures as an icon. Subsequent to her death, each decade and each generation reinterprets her life. Spiritually, she engenders empathy and compassion in those born in the generations following her death, who project their own subjective interpretations onto her extraordinary life. She recognized this quality in herself and once said, "People don't see me, instead they see a mirror." She has become a cultural metaphor and an icon for the universal themes of both death and desire. The folks I'd like to thank this evening. Courtney O'Connell. Wave, Courtney. Courtney was my mentor in high school, who agreed to read and edit a manuscript I had written in 7th grade about a brother and sister who solved crimes. It was called Sleuth Duo. I had avidly read Agatha Christie novels and saw myself as writing a series of mysteries featuring characters as they aged, like Agatha Christie's Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot. At the time, Courtney was 27. She was a hot blonde English teacher. She's still hot and blonde, but she's retired now. And I was a 13-year-old geek who fancied myself as a future author. My own English teacher didn't have time for me, so she pushed me off to Courtney, who became an adopted family member and an Auntie Mame, for those of you who know that film reference. I was pent up and conservative, and she, well, let's say she broadened my horizon. All kids need a loving family and a mentor, and I was fortunate to have a loving family and the best mentor. Have you ever heard of the book Tuesdays with Maury? Well, I enjoy Friday happy hours with Marcia. I have known Marcia Lane for over 20 years, first meeting her when she presented at the Polk County Sexual Abuse Prevention Network in 1994, and I wanted to grow up professionally and be like her. Marcia has been so interested in my writing and has heard all the details about the blood, sweat, and tears involved. She also shares my love of traveling and has heard so much of our plans to visit Paris in October. Thank you, Marcia, for hosting me. Thank you to Stacy Kratz and Pam Jeffrey, my friends and colleagues for many years, who are also hosting along with Marcia. We have worked together over the years with families who have struggled with abuse and mental health issues. They work diligently in children's mental health services in Florida at a time when resources are shrinking, but they persist in their commitment. Stacy is now teaching and preparing the next generation of helping professionals. I admire these ladies as women and professionals. Their hosting this event is so significant, as all three have dedicated their careers and lives to making a difference. Thanks to Oscar, who as of January 16th, I can now refer to as my legal husband in the state of Florida.
Thank you.
After a 25-year engagement. Our silver anniversary trip to Paris in October will actually become a honeymoon. Who knew? A poem written by Marilyn herself in the mid-1950s, which lyrically addresses both her trauma and her resilience. Life, I am both your directions, existing more with a cold frost, strong as a cobweb in the wind, hanging downward the most, somehow remaining. Those beaded rays have colors I've seen in paintings. Ah, life, they have cheated you, thinner than a cobweb's thread, sheerer than any, but it did attach itself, and held fast in strong winds, and singed by the leaping hot fires. Life, of which at singular times I am both of your directions. Somehow, I remain hanging downward the most, as both your directions pull me. Thank you, my friends.